Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that beneath the surface of the Hamilton family's polished exterior lies a vicious game of secrets and survival. Hayley Hamilton, wife to the esteemed and well-respected attorney Bill Hamilton, has long played the role of devoted spouse. At charity galas, at courtroom victories, in local interviews she stood by her husband, glowing, dignified, unwavering. To the outside world, they were unshakable. But Hayley knew better. She knew that smiles could hide daggers. Over the past year, Hayley had grown suspicious. Bill had become colder, distant. There were cryptic late-night phone calls, sudden business trips with no verifiable clients, and documents in his briefcase that didn't quite add up. But what truly unmoored her was the name, Kenny. A name that sent a visible tremor through Bill's carefully controlled composure every time it came up. Kenny, a former associate and once close friend, had died under mysterious circumstances a year earlier. Officially, the cause was suicide. But Hayley never believed that. So she hired a private investigator. Discreet, expensive, and efficient. The surveillance started subtly: a few tail jobs, an intercept of call records, monitoring of bank transfers. But what the investigator unearthed stunned even Hayley. Bill hadn't just been hiding assets or having an affair. He had ordered Kenny's death. The report was thorough. Phone transcripts, digital trails, anonymous witnesses. Bill had contacted a known fixer to handle a loose end. That loose end was Kenny, who had apparently discovered something damning about a high-profile case Bill had mishandled years ago. Kenny had threatened to expose him. So Bill silenced him. Hayley stared at the manila folder in her hands for hours before doing anything. Her breath came in uneven bursts. Her mind raced through every birthday dinner, every family holiday, every intimate moment they had shared since Kenny's death. And now all she saw was a lie. But instead of confronting him immediately, Hayley did something far more calculated. She decided to turn his crime into her currency. She waited until the timing was perfect. Then she brought it up casually one morning over coffee. "Do you ever think about Kenny?" she asked, her tone light, almost playful. Bill glanced up, puzzled. "Sometimes." "Why?" "Just wondering if you think he suffered before he died." Bill blinked, then smiled. "It was suicide, Hayley. A tragedy. But no use dwelling on it." Hayley nodded and said nothing more. That evening, she sent him an anonymous message. A single line: "You buried Kenny. But I can unearth him." Bill was rattled. He spent the next few days withdrawn, on edge. He hired someone to sweep their house for bugs. He accused a junior partner of leaking information. Hayley watched him with clinical fascination. She had never felt more in control. But then came Danny. Danny Dupree, a fiery and impulsive socialite with strong ties to Bill's law firm and an unpredictable sense of loyalty, happened to witness Hayley confronting Bill in a moment of restrained rage outside their estate. Hayley had made a sharp, veiled threat about truth coming out when Danny approached. Misreading the situation entirely, Danny stepped between them and struck Hayley across the face. "You don't speak to him like that," Danny snapped. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Hayley, stunned for only a moment, composed herself and responded with ice in her voice. "And you, Danny, just signed your own fate." Later that night, Hayley's rage was volcanic. She poured a drink with trembling fingers and made a call to a number stored under a coded contact name, D. Hunter. "Follow her," she hissed. "And wait for my word. She needs to feel it." The man on the other end simply replied, "Understood." The hit was never supposed to be real. It was only meant to scare Danny, to leave her with a bruise or a warning scratch. But Hayley had made the call while furious, her emotions clouding her usually precise judgment. What followed would spiral far beyond what she had calculated. Within hours, Danny was attacked in a parking lot outside a wine bar she frequented. She survived barely. A head wound and broken rib. She told police she never saw her assailant clearly. It looked like a mugging. But Hayley knew better. She hadn't said cancel. She hadn't said wait. And now Danny was hospitalized. The problem wasn't the attack. The problem was the breadcrumbs. The same PI Hayley had used to investigate Bill had grown greedy. He'd been monitoring her too, knowing that someone like Hayley Hamilton never acted without reason. He had recordings. He had a copy of the phone call Hayley made to her mysterious contact. The walls were closing in on everyone. Bill noticed the shift first. Hayley was quieter, more controlled. She no longer bothered hiding her disdain. He began suspecting she knew something, but couldn't figure out what. Meanwhile, Danny, now recovering, began having flashbacks. She remembered seeing the glint of a chain, a tattoo on the man's neck. And more importantly, she remembered hearing him say a name, Hayley. She told the police. A detective visited the Hamilton estate 2 days later. It was an informal conversation and accusatory, but enough to rattle Hayley. Enough to warn her that the predator had become the prey. To shield herself, Hayley tried to spin the narrative. She leaked Bill's secrets anonymously to the press. A retired journalist she trusted ran a story about a powerful attorney under quiet investigation for judicial corruption tied to a witness's mysterious death. It went viral overnight. Bill was blindsided. Calls poured in. Clients withdrew. The firm distanced themselves. And still, Hayley sat beside him every night, silent, unreadable. She wasn't finished. Hayley contacted her private investigator again. This time, the tone was different. "You release anything on me," she said, "and the only job you'll be getting is picking up trash in prison. I own you now." The PI laughed. "You think you do. But I have more than enough to burn both you and your husband to the ground. One wrong move, and I make you the story." Hayley smiled tightly. "Then let's make sure I don't make that move." But behind the scenes, she began putting together another file, this one on the investigator himself. He wasn't as clean as he claimed. A few bribes here, falsified records there. Enough to turn the tables if needed. All the while, Bill, now desperate, began seeking help from unlikely allies including Danny. The woman who once slapped Hayley was now aligned with Bill in trying to uncover what Hayley was hiding. Danny didn't know the whole truth. But she wanted vengeance. Together, Bill and Danny hatched a plan to entrap Hayley using the very tactics she had once used against Bill. But Hayley was already watching. And she wasn't planning on losing. Danny Dupree stood in front of the courthouse steps, sunglasses hiding the swelling around her eyes, her ribs still aching with every breath. The attack had changed something in her, not just physically, but mentally. She no longer cared about appearances or whispered alliances. She wanted answers. And she wanted revenge. Not just against the man who struck her, but the woman who ordered it. The name Hayley Hamilton had echoed in her mind ever since the detective let it slip during their last conversation. Bill Hamilton approached her that evening under the veil of secrecy. Their meeting was unplanned, almost accidental, but their goals aligned. Bill needed to reclaim his name, and Danny needed to reclaim control. They sat in his car, engine off, tension between them thick. "You want to take her down," Danny said, voice low. "So do I. But I need to know, what are you willing to lose to do it?" Bill didn't blink. Everything. They knew Hayley was careful, methodical. She never left traces unless she wanted someone to find them. And recently, her mistakes felt deliberate. Bill suspected she was leading someone into a trap, either the media, the police, or him. He told Danny about the blackmail, the anonymous leaks to the press. She told him about the man who attacked her and the slip of his tongue. Together, they pieced together Hayley's recent moves, and every thread led back to a shadow network of surveillance, manipulation, and leverage. Meanwhile, Hayley was already 3 steps ahead. She had traced Danny's hospital visitor logs, watched the security footage from outside the courthouse, and intercepted a burner phone used by the man who'd contacted Bill. She knew they were aligning against her. What they didn't know was that Hayley had grown tired of hiding. The role of patient schemer no longer satisfied her. She wanted chaos on her own terms. The game wasn't about justice or power anymore. It was about survival. She had spent months building a narrative, collecting evidence not just on Bill but on everyone who had ever crossed her. Including Danny. especially Danny. Hayley sent a flash drive anonymously to the district attorney's office. Encrypted but traceable. It contained footage of Bill meeting with known fixers from years ago, old, blurry but damning. She had held it back during the Kenny cover-up investigation, but now she deployed it with precision. The DA launched a renewed inquiry. Bill was summoned to provide testimony. His lawyer advised silence, but Bill knew the attack on Kenny was just the tip of the iceberg. If he let Hayley win again, he would never regain control. So he offered a deal, partial immunity in exchange for full disclosure about Hayley's shadow dealings. The investigators listened. And then they called Danny. Danny was torn. Testifying meant admitting her own misjudgments. But it also meant putting an end to Hayley's schemes. She agreed. Then came the fallout. As media pressure grew and legal eyes turned toward the Hamilton estate, Hayley vanished. One morning, her driver arrived to pick her up, but the house was empty. Her phone was disconnected. Her passport and credit cards were left untouched. A single note rested on the nightstand. I was never running. I was clearing the board. Bill panicked. Danny was furious. Authorities scrambled to track her down. But Hayley hadn't gone far. She was watching from inside the city, staying just close enough to monitor the wreckage. She saw the headlines. She saw Danny's statement. She saw Bill's televised press conference where he admitted to past, professional misconduct and blamed his moral failings on marital pressure. And Hayley smiled. She released her final card. To multiple news outlets, she leaked files implicating Danny in years of tax fraud and embezzlement linked to charity events. Danny, once the community darling, was suddenly the new scandal. She denied it, of course, called it a smear campaign, but the financial records were real. Hayley had obtained them years ago, but waited until Danny was fully exposed to make her move. Danny was arrested on financial crimes. Out on bail but disgraced. Her professional empire, once thriving, crumbled overnight. Bill thought he had weathered the worst until a new witness came forward, a former intern at his firm who had been paid off to alter documents tied to the Kenny case. The DA now had corroborating testimony from 3 independent sources. The partial immunity was revoked. He was indicted within the week. Back in hiding, Hayley reached out to only one person, the same private investigator she once tried to threaten. She paid him double his original rate to disappear her digital footprint and relocate her under a new identity. The man was skeptical, but money talked louder than loyalty. Before she disappeared completely, Hayley left a final message to the press. Not a confession. Not a denial. Just a single quote. Some women break. Others sharpen. No one knew where she went. Some said Europe. Others thought she never left the country at all. Kat, who had been distant throughout the fallout, quietly changed her last name. She severed ties with both her parents, choosing to start a life somewhere no one knew the Hamilton legacy. She never spoke to Danny again. The legacy of the Hamilton family fell not with a bang, but in slow erosion. Legal trials. Investigations. Broken reputations. And through it all, one truth became clear: no one escaped clean. Hayley had started it as a controlled act of vengeance. But what she left behind was an empire of ash. The silence left behind in Hayley Hamilton's absence was deafening. The headlines that once screamed of fraud, corruption, and betrayal gradually faded, replaced by newer scandals and fresh faces. But for those left in the wreckage she had created, the damage didn't heal with time calcified. Kat Hamilton, now living under a new name, had enrolled in a graduate criminology program on the opposite coast. She rarely spoke to anyone from her past. The Hamilton surname had become toxic, even in cities where no one knew the full story. When asked about her family, she simply said, "They're gone." But she hadn't forgotten. Kat kept a digital archive on an encrypted drive: documents, photos, voice memos, bank transfers. Everything she could recover from the investigation into her parents. The file was titled Only Ashes. One evening, she received a parcel without a return address. Inside was a small flash drive, a single orchid pressed between pages of a tattered copy of Crime and Punishment, and a handwritten note that read, "I never planned on survival. Only on balance." Kat plugged the flash drive into her laptop. The video file inside showed Hayley sitting in an unfamiliar room, her hair shorter, her face sharper, but her voice unmistakable. "If you're watching this, then you've figured out enough to know where I've gone. I'm not here to apologize, Kat. Not to you, not to anyone. But I want you to understand one thing. I didn't just do it to destroy your father or to protect myself. I did it because no one else ever dared to." She looked away from the camera for a moment, then back. This world doesn't reward the careful or the kind. It rewards the ones who are willing to let everything burn. I taught you to be strong. Maybe not in the way you wanted. But you're still here. That's all that matters. The file ended. No location data. No fingerprints. Just a final digital ghost of a woman whose name still echoed in legal circles like a curse. Kat didn't cry. She uploaded the video to her archive and locked the folder with a new password, Legacy. Back in their city, Bill Hamilton's legal battles dragged on. With his immunity revoked and his reputation decimated, the once powerful attorney had become a shell of his former self. He refused to speak Hayley's name again. When approached for a tell-all interview, he responded with silence. Danny Dupree was no longer on speaking terms with anyone tied to the Hamilton scandal. The financial crimes trial went public, and although she avoided prison by settling and relinquishing most of her assets, she lived in self-imposed exile. She tried to rebuild her brand from scratch, but found that in the digital age, true erasure is impossible. A single podcast series titled Ashes of the Gate debuted months later, created by an anonymous former law student. It meticulously chronicled the Hamilton case, the fallout, and the fates of everyone involved. The final episode theorized about Hayley's current whereabouts, pointing to multiple unconfirmed sightings: a woman matching her description boarding a train in France, another spotted on a hiking trail in Chile. None could be verified. But what caught Kat's attention was the podcast's closing message. If Hayley Hamilton is still out there, she left one message behind. Not for forgiveness. Not for fame. But for a challenge. The question isn't whether she won. It's whether anyone else was willing to play the game to the end. Kat closed the laptop and looked out the window at the city skyline. Her past would always follow her, but she had found a way to live beside it instead of beneath it. There would be no public retribution, no courtroom battle for justice. That part of the story was over. But deep down, she knew the truth. Some gates never close. They just wait for the next one to walk through.